Okay, so the supplies you'll need to start out with are a piece of paper, a stencil that's a rectangle like this, and a ruler. So our goal is to make a room that looks three-dimensional, as if you could walk right into it. So we're going to start with taking our stencil and trying to get it in the center of our paper. It doesn't have to be exact, but what you don't want to do is turn it so it's super obviously turned. So try to get it sort of straight so that this line is parallel with this line. Also, if your rectangle is too far to the bottom, you're going to have a lot of ceiling. If it's further up to the top, you're going to have a lot of floor. So ideally it's sort of in the center, but if you know that you're going to have a lot of things on the floor or the ceiling, you may want to scooch it one way or the other. For example, if a lot of my images are on the floor, maybe I want to scooch it that way so I have more floor. But for mine, I'm going to try to center it. And then we'll trace. And this ends up being our back wall that's going to be open into space, or whatever space we imagine back there. So then to make it three-dimensional, I want to connect my corners, the corner of my rectangle with the corner of my paper, and for that I'm going to use my ruler. So you'll want to make sure that on the edge of your ruler we have the corner and the corner. Hold it still and draw. A lot of times when you're using a ruler, if you push super hard with your pencil, you're going to move your ruler over, which makes your line wiggly. Just trace it lightly and try not to push too hard against the ruler. Plus, if you draw lightly, you can erase if you need to. Okay, so first we're going to focus on the floor, and you need to decide if you want more of wood planks or tile. Whichever one you choose, you're going to start the same. Okay, so here I am down at the floor, and what I want to do is just make a very light mark in the center, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And then right below it, I'm going to make a dot. So here's the thing about our room looking three-dimensional. Our tiles will get bigger as they get closer to us, as they get further down the page. So for right now, ignore the bottom of your paper and let's focus on the back of the floor. So I'm going to put a dot in the center of the edge and the dot I just made. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So a dot between the middle and the edge here. Then I'm going to do one more dot in between those, as centered as I can. So now I have to ignore the top, and I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom, but it won't be directly below the ones at the top, because for example, the middle between the edge and here is more like right there, right? So that's not underneath my dot that was in the middle of those. So I'm pretending those aren't there for the minute. And then I've got one there between the edge and the middle. And then just like above, I'm going to make a dot in between those. Now I need to connect my dots. So I would just go in order so you don't miss any. So I'm making sure my two dots are on the edge of my ruler and lightly draw my line. And do that with all the pairs of dots. Okay, so these they look like planks, right? And we want them to be tiles. And we do already have kind of a 3D effect because they are skinnier as they go back. So what also happens is that the tiles will get wider, like taller, as we get closer to. But I'm just going to eyeball this. So what I want to have is this first line to be about there, sort of close to this back edge, not too close. And again, I don't want it to be crooked. I want to try to make my lines parallel across. So there's that one. Your line should get a little bit further apart as you go down the paper. So that the tiles that are in front are bigger than these tiles back there. So that's your tile floor. So for the wood floor, we're going to make planks. So what I'm going to do is take my ruler, it's parallel to this top line, and I'm going to go every third one. So line, blank, blank, line, blank, blank, line, blank. Then I'm going to scooch down to about here, and I'm going to go to the next one. Line, blank, blank, line, blank, blank, line. Then I'm going to scooch down to almost the bottom and do the ones I didn't do yet. So now let's talk about the walls on the side. So you're going to want some windows so that your objects can be coming from the space behind the room or outside of the room into it. You can choose, probably your easiest options are either an arched window or just a square window. So let's do the arch. The arch is probably the easiest. I want to use a lot of this space because I want to make sure I have room for my object that's printed to fit in it. So I'm going to start about here. I'm going to leave some space here for the wall. And I'm going to go up and over. I don't want to get too close to this edge. Now this side is going to dip down because for that perspective we want the diagonal line just like we have there. So I didn't end it equal to that, I went further down. And then for the bottom of the arch, I use my ruler so it's a little bit straighter. For the rectangle window, we're not going to make a rectangle like this because again we want that perspective. So I want straight lines now. So instead of going a curve, I'm going to make a straight line there. This one is parallel with that vertical line. I'm going to make a straight line here, and again leaving some space to the edge because that will help me later when I'm starting to cut things out. Now this line should be longer. So basically whatever space I have here in between, I should have about the same amount there, maybe a little less. And then I use my ruler to connect the top and the bottom, and I automatically get that diagonal line, which makes it look three-dimensional. You could have both arches, you could have both rectangles, or like this, you could have one of each. For your ceiling. For your ceiling, you can choose whatever you want. I just want something on the ceiling. You might want to draw some lights. An easy thing to do is just draw a pattern. So for example, if I chose some hearts, if I want them to have that 3D look, I'm going to make smaller hearts closest to the rectangle. I might have some medium hearts in the middle, and I'm trying to just kind of make them look random, and then some bigger hearts as we get closer to the top of our paper. Now this is a different kind of perspective than when we do a landscape. Usually things get farther away the higher we go, but since we have a ceiling, it works a little bit differently. But again, things get smaller as they go down. Now you could, like for example, you might draw a chandelier or just something on the ceiling. Polka dots would actually be a much easier pattern than my hearts here, and that would be absolutely fine. But please do not just have a solid ceiling. All right,